Hey, David T.S. Wood here, and welcome to My Extra Mile. Our comment winner is Dana Dietz. Thank you for the teachings on leaders, resolve conflict. That's a great acronym. She's so helpful. Thanks, Dana. Thanks for being a part of it. Our show today, I'm so excited. This woman is brilliant, heartfelt, authentic, transparent. Today's show is all about being able to navigate any and all of life's obstacles or challenges and the power of pivoting. Now, listen, I don't know what happened, but for some reason, you're not going to see me. You'll hear my voice, but the camera wasn't flipping backwards and forwards. No idea what happened, but it's such a great show. I'm going to put it out there anyway. You're just going to miss my very pretty face. Now enjoy the show. We'll definitely see you on the other side, and enjoy the incredible Tanya Kirkpatrick. So Tanya, hi.
Hi.
It's amazing. When I think about you, and I think about how you are, who you are, how you show up, and there's so many words that sort of filter through my sort of mind as I describe you to myself. And one of the things that really stands out to me is this, and I know the word's thrown around a lot, but is integrity. But it's more than that. It's the transparency part, or the authenticity, because integrity is it's a weave for me of so many things. But transparency and congruency, and I could layer on so many different words. And I think that do you mind if I say your age?
Absolutely.
All right, so she's 73. No, I'm just kidding. but you're 45, right? And we were just chatting a moment ago about these different seasons, and I like to think different chapters. I think in chapters.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the one chapter that is undeniable, which is the chapter of our body, which I think is where we kept the word seasons. What's it been like? Because so many of my listeners are women. I'd say about 80%. And a lot of women are in your age demographic, but anywhere from 35 to 65. So, you're in that sweet spot. But there seems to be such a struggle in the modern world with authenticity and transparency, and women living in their bodies in a healthy way and looking in the mirror and loving the changes. It's almost like we're fighting, and especially in America. I think America is probably one of the, not the worst. I mean, you get other countries in Asia where it's a fixation, but certainly I feel that there's a sort of almost an unhealthy focus on what's wrong versus what's right. Talk a little bit about your understanding of this season and the season you're in and what you're learning about yourself.
Thank you so much. It's a really hot topic for me, and something I'm super passionate about, because I think a lot of women find themselves in this season of maybe reinventing themselves, or thinking, that one chapter is over or a season is over, and they're reeling. They're like, where do I go now? Maybe it was, really raising children, and your kids are getting a little bit older. Maybe it was you were doing a supporting of a spouse role. And so a lot of women I'm talking to that are right kind of where I am, their bodies are changing, hormones are changing, their roles are changing, and they find themselves kind of reeling, like, what's next for me? And so I am super passionate about being able to slide into the seat right next to them and say, it's okay to have those questions, and it's okay that maybe you didn't go to college, or maybe you didn't specialize in something in the first couple seasons of your life, but today is the opportunity to start right where you are, imperfect, same as I am, and let's do this thing together. So it's been really good being able to have some candid conversations about different changes in your body. And I agree, so many women look and go, oh my gosh, how did I get here, right? This is a body after babies. And they're just wondering, literally, is there hope for me in this next chapter, next season?
Yeah, I see a lot of confidence sort of eroding, because you say and it's predominantly women. I know there's guys listening, and you guys who are listening right now thinking, oh, this isn't a subject for me. Guess what? This is definitely a subject for you, because whether you're growing daughters, or whether you're an inspiration for a niece, or whether you're in a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex, then understanding this journey and understanding the complexity of it, I think, is something that every guy is gonna benefit from. But when we look at this, almost getting lost in the service of children and a spouse, and sort of sitting in the back row, and really, that's what I've seen a lot with some women, thinking it's kind of over. They dedicated those 20 years or whatever it is, 23 years to their children, and feeling like they have nothing more to contribute, or it's too late to start over. And what you're saying, which I love, and we're going to get into the body thing in a moment, but what I love is it's never really too late. And you're working with a lot of women that are suddenly opening their eyes to saying, hey, this is going to be the best chapter of my life. Right?
Yeah. Totally. And being able to inspire them, because I feel like when we're little, like the little girls, we dream about our wedding, we dream about our future children, we dream about our future, job and how we'll show up in the world. And then you get into this next season, and for whatever reason, I really feel like even if you've been successful in a position or a job that you love, they're ready to maybe potentially make a shift. They're tired, maybe they feel unappreciated. Maybe that what they loved once, they're really ready for just that up level shift and really that service to a new demographic. And it's been really cool to be able to see and sit next to the side of them again and say, yes, you can. And let me hold your hand and help walk you through that. And this is what I've been through. And here's some tools to really help you.
Yeah. I can just imagine some women looking at you. And again, this is going to be a lot of compliments coming all at once. But also behind that is just trying to put myself in the seat, which is always what I attempt to do, is put myself in the seat of someone viewing or listening to us, somebody who doesn't have the confidence, or maybe their body has got, they've hurt a lot of children, maybe it's got away from them, or they've been in an unhealthy relationship. So they've sort of lost their way a little bit with what they're seeing in the mirror. And more of the conversations they're having is quite negative. So they look at you and you're, incredibly beautiful on the outside, but also incredibly beautiful on the inside. You have very, very clear faith, which you're very connected to. You have beautiful relationships that you develop. You have an incredible marriage and children. And so all these different areas of your life, it's almost like, oh my God, it's okay for you because you got it all together. But I want to talk about it because I can just see people using that as maybe an excuse to sort of not put themselves in this conversation, but just witness it versus saying, well, what if? You obviously come across this all the time. When you got someone like that who really is judging themselves so harshly in comparison of other people like yourself, what's some of the things, what's some of the conversations you're having, or how are you helping people navigate those early days before they can see the vision for their own life?
Oh my gosh, I love that. I ask a lot of questions because even though it can look good on the outside, doesn't mean that I don't struggle. So I really try and find the common ground. Like I argue with my husband. I get frustrated with my kids. I, hit plateaus in what I assume that, I should look like or I should feel like. But I'm constantly in a quest for being better, which so aligns with who we are, right? And that integral piece of showing up authentically and finding the common ground. You spoke that so clearly when I very first met you, and it was something that I was doing and didn't realize it. And so I would say, ask a lot of questions. I ask women candidly, do you get undressed with the lights on or off in front of your spouse? When you stand and look in the mirror, are you picking yourself apart, or are you really embracing who you are and all of your qualities, both physically, but also what's on the inside? I talk to my daughters a lot about setting intention. And I do this also with the women that I'm working with and say, what would the intention look like if you were to make some shifts? And I feel like this year, it's the power of the pivot. So, if you were to pivot in this moment, and if this is something in an area you're wanting to work on, what are the intentions? And what would be the qualities of a woman to set those intentions? So when I'm talking to my kids, I always say, make a top 10 list for like your future spouse, right? Who would you love to, spend the rest of your life with? And really, what's number one and what's number two? And we really talk about this top 10. And then what are those things that you're willing to lay down if they don't quite meet that? Do you have non-negotiables? And so the same kind of concept, but I always flip it then, David, and say, now here's the tricky part, right? Or here's the challenge for you. You got to be that top 10. And so I'll encourage women if
I want to slow you down just a bit because I want people to get that, because it's so beautiful. And when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, this is something that, it's such a nuance and subtlety. And I think someone listening might, right,
They may have made a note, but I don't think it landed inside of them that, hold on, what did she just say? Okay, I'm going to write a top 10 list. And I'm going to make sure that there's some non-negotiables in there that say absolutely. But when I look at that list, I'm actually writing a list for myself because, you know, I want to mirror, I want to be the mirror of the person that I want to attract. So the initial work isn't about attracting or having that person. It's about becoming the person that you most want to attract. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, you nailed it. And becoming that is like that next level of falling in love with who you are and who you are equipped to be in this next season. And so I encourage people, I'm never done growing, right? I sit in front of you as an imperfect woman. I struggle. I have the negative committee often in my head. What I do different.
She has a whole committee, people. Some of you just have a negative voice. She's got a committee meeting.
What I do though is equip myself with not staying in that place, being able to impact yourself with truths. And so I ask these women specifically, I'm like, put the intentions on stickies and put them all around your mirror where you see them every single morning. You see them before you go to bed, and you really start to put that visual with the intention that you're putting out, and it just melds the two together. Oftentimes we'll have them put it as their screensaver in their I am statements. So you forward speak before maybe you own that next level of that intention in your life. I am a woman who loves her body. I am empowered to make good choices according to my goals. I am a woman who supports, her family and loves that. I'm a woman who supports her spouse. I am a beautiful individual. There's so many different places that you could go with this, David, but really, again, when I'm talking to my girls about dating, I'm like, don't take the first guy that walks by, right? You got to set your intention. Otherwise, you're just going to settle for whatever. And a lot of times I find women.
Actually, with the settle, I'm sorry interrupting, but the settling process, which you see happening, and you see it right from the get-go, is once you start settling. I mean, there's a lot of people playing very low level to be in the relationship they're in, and they stay there, even though they easily, if they're being truly transparent and authentic, easily could be in a whole different arena with a whole different feeling. But because they settled early, they continue to settle until it becomes their identity, and then they lose the path or lose the vision. That's what I love about this I am statement, and talking in the vision of what's possible, not what you're feeling necessarily. It's that reinforcement. And what you and I understand how the brain works, and that, when we're creating new neural pathways, all of the way, I always say that, in fact, I was having this conversation in the gym this morning with the girl that works behind the counter who's really struggling right now. She's only young, she's 24, and she was talking about some of the negative committee she has in her head. And I was just saying, one of the ways to distinguish what's real is, think of your authentic self. Your authentic self is the part that can talk love and kindness and, compassion and empathy. And when you hear it, you hear things that are about possibility. That's the authentic part of ourselves. That's the part you've tapped into, which is you continually love to grow. The other part, the negative voice, is the conditioning. It's what we've heard. It's what we've experienced. It's what we've felt. It's the disappointments. It's the heartbreaks that we continue to carry with us like a bag on our back. And so there's definitely this sort of two parts. But the one part that you're talking about tapping into, which is the authentic self, is always there. It never goes away. But it just gets quieter if we don't do the work, if we don't put the energy into not only discovering, but living it fully, right?
For sure. And I think that oftentimes we sell ourselves short. We are our constant chatter, right? We hear everything that we speak out. And so why not put the good stuff out into the universe? Why not say, I'm going to forward speak. I remember when I very first was presented with an opportunity to grow physically and financially. I forward spoke where I was going, and it gave me such hope, and it allowed me to borrow confidence that I wasn't quite yet seated in the middle.
Can you give us an example to someone listening? So you had this opportunity. What was the forward speak that you used back then? If you could remember some of it that was allowing you, remember, you weren't believing it. The negative committee was doing its job. What you were doing though consciously was you were sort of quietening it with your own, forward speaking, which was sort of like drowning it out, and then over time not silencing it, because you know it's still there. Something can happen and you can trigger that negative voice so quickly. But again, with the work, if you can constantly watching and listening to what's happening in there, and you're correcting, because this is the thing, right? That negative voice, if you let it go, it's just going to get louder and louder, right? So what were some of the things you did back then, or some of the things you said that allowed you to forward speak into the life you've created?
I think it's about a couple of things. So first, the foundation. Working my body out every day is huge for mindset. It allows you to tap into natural feel-good endorphins. Second part was fueling my body with amazing nutrition that was meeting a need that I was falling short in prior. And the third part about that, again, is that forward speaking. And I would forward speak goals. I would set tangible, attainable, but a stretch of a goal. So one of them was I was going to pay off a second mortgage that we had taken on our home. It was something that was stressing my husband, Jeremy, out. It was stressing me out. And it was really just over us. But my financial thermostat, David, was set really low as a kiddo. We didn't grow up with a whole lot. And my parents divorced when I was in 7th grade, and it was devastating. So for me to forward speak that, I needed to hear that it was okay, and I needed to give myself permission that it was absolutely possible. And I was borrowing the belief of other people too that had come before me, that I had seen at events, and they were able to pay for a washer and dryer when their washer and dryer went out of commission. And so I thought, well, if they could do that, I could absolutely pay off this, hefty, we had like a $47,000 hefty second mortgage. And I knew that I always had these conversations with God, and I was like, you know what, Tanya, I just felt like he's like, I'll bring the people. You do the work. I don't want to rob you of that opportunity. You do the work, and I'll help bring the people. Because everybody benefits from literally helping to up-level their life physically and financially. And I really saw that molded when I was in women's ministry. And so I really took what I had learned and put it to work in this opportunity. And that was a game changer.
That's so good. When you said women's ministry, something that came up for me, and I know this has been taken out of context a number of times. But when I met the Dalai Lama, which is a number of years ago, something that he said, which has been quoted and requoted, which, the world's going to be saved by the Western woman, something along those lines. We're seeing it today. We're seeing this there, and it's been coming for a lot of years, but there's definitely an awareness, and I see it in sports, I see it in theater, I see it everywhere, that there's this sort of an awakening of women in a level I've never seen before. And I just wonder, what is it that you're sensing right now for women listening? What is it about the woman's psychology and physiology and the journey of a woman that's equipped her really to I think, put the world to rights? Because men have been, I almost swore there, but you know what I'm going to say, been mucking this up for years. I mean, you think of how many wars have ever been started by a woman. I mean, I can think of one maybe, but there were women warriors back in the day. But there's certainly this kind of something about the psychology and again the physiology and the mindset of women who are healthy. And the thing is, and when I say healthy, I'm talking about in love with their imperfection, because that's how I define health. Is just, you can have a lot going on, but as long as you're in love with the journey and who you are. But what's your sense? You've got daughters, and what's the sense about the possibility for women today?
Man, sometimes I feel like because I am such a driver, I've done it and maybe a disservice to my daughters. I look and I remember being in our kitchen one time and I was talking legacy, and I got super emotional, David. I guess this would be the best way for me to kind of sum it up. And I was like, but what legacy have I left? And my daughters all stood up. It makes me so emotional. Think about it. And they were like, Mom, you taught us there are no glass ceilings. You taught us to push past the status quo. You taught us how to forward speak our goal and just run right through them and on to the next one. And although we've seen you do this, we've also seen you fall apart behind the scenes. And we've seen you, be bullied on social media. we've seen the hardship of the journey and sometimes saw you be lonely in the process, because you can't grow and expand and be this next level of a servant leader without also having those challenges, right? You don't get this beautiful diamond without a lot of pressure and compression and turning and molding and shaping and shifting. And so I think that women today are feeling more empowered than ever before, but also connecting with other women who say it's okay that, you know, you don't have it all together. And in this society that is like, let's wear this badge of busy, right? And you're a bigger, you know, badass if you're wear this badge of busy. To lay that down and really be able to prioritize, where do we spend our time? How do we best show up and allow other women space to do it imperfect, and also share what we've learned along the way? There's something powerful about being in this season and looking at younger women as they're kind of coming up and they're kind of growing into themselves, because I have not arrived, and pouring in wisdom in a way that helps get their footing a little bit underneath them. And I feel like we're called in this season to blaze a trail for the women too that are kind of coming up through the ranks in their seasons of life. And we have, you know, our oldest daughter just made us grandparents, and she excelled in sports, which really, she taught me so much because I had never been a part of a team. And I got to be the team mom and really see these young women come together for one purpose and a greater good. Our second daughter just graduated from the fast track nursing program in 2.5 years. And I got to see her grit and tenacity push her past and right through goals when, you know, her peers were more excited too about being that young, vibrant college student. She was like, nah, I got big goals. And I asked her the other day, I'm like, do you regret that? And she's like, not at all, Mom. She's like, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I know God has prepared me for such a time as this. So I would say the women today are more in line to reach back or reach forward or reach up or reach down and say, come on, I got you. And it's those moments that define us in the future.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's funny because I don't have many of these signs. You can see it over my shoulder there on the corner. It says, it's never too late to start the day over. But I have that one up there because it's almost like, you know, yeah, I mean, crap can happen, shit can happen, but, you know, our ability to restart and start over is always that. And that's the only sign I have up at the house, but I love it right there. So it's never too late. Just start right over, start now. When we talked earlier, we haven't really talked about your success and what you're enjoying and the fact that you've sort of moved. How many years ago did you move into the profession you're in? You're a professional network marketer. How many years has that been?
7 years.
7 years. And before that, just to give people context, what was the profession you came out of?
So I never went to college. I used to let that be a title or a label that really defined me and where I would move or what I wouldn't do because of it. I had an opportunity, a woman who, you know, was probably 10 years older than me, tapped me on the shoulder and just said, hey, I see your gifts and your talents, and would you own this ministry? And that really started to unwrap a little bit of giving myself permission to kind of step in and lean in. And I remember telling her, nope, not at all. You got the wrong girl for the job. I think women are mean. And it's crazy to see that belief system that I had then to the belief system of typically the women that are most hurtful, David, they're the ones who are most hurting.
Yeah.
And my sister and my mom actually introduced me to network marketing as a young kiddo. And I got to see her really make friends outside of our family and have some fun spending money. My sister was really successful in another network marketing company, and I had joined her for a small bit. It really wasn't my cup of tea, and I had gone on to try a couple of other network marketing companies. And what I had come to find is that it was a lot of work, right? And I was training and doing lots of different events and things and pouring in, but I hadn't found, it's like looking for that right, if you're a baseball or softball fan, looking for that glove that just fits right. And when this opportunity came along, it was something that was so life-changing because it met me right where I was at. it made a huge impact in my physical health. And I started to understand that it was something that no matter who you are, what age, what demographic, what ethnic background, what gender, you could benefit from it. And I couldn't stop talking.
Just to give context again, and we have a disclaimer that comes up, just to talk about, within our profession. Obviously, it's called network marketing. It is real work. It's a real profession. People get paid in accordance to the amount of conversations they have. They get paid in accordance to the amount of products that are consumed, not the amount of people that they've introduced. So we understand all those things. So just to give context, your income today, where's your income? Can I ask that just this year? What will you make, or what did you make last year? Or what will you make this year in your profession as a network marketer 7 years in?
I wish I knew the exact amount, but I always say my husband.
Jeremy would.
Jeremy would know the exact amount. It was it was over 7 figures. And
so over $1 million a year.
Yes.
So over $100,000 a month US. I mean, I just want that to sort of settle, because again, it was a path you dabbled in a couple of times because of family members. You didn't necessarily have the belief in that very beginning that this was a path you could succeed in, but because it met you where you were at, and then we're talking about different seasons. So going back to our opening conversation, there was a season for you at 38 of your body and nutrition, and that how you started your day, which was really important, was health. So there was a combination of the health, the nutrition, or the focus on health, the nutrition, and the community, the fact that people grew here. And that's something you said, again, is something they've always been interested in. Obviously raising a family, is that there is definitely, for any of us who are professional network marketers, an understanding that it is about this continual growth, that it's not the busy badge. It's about the elegance of growing and expanding. And as we help someone to grow, it actually almost grows us automatically, just in that process of reaching down and helping someone reach where we are. It pushes us up. You said to me about, I asked, one of the keys to your success, and you talked about loving people. And I think it's we could spend 2 shows just talking about this in sort of how to love people. But would you attribute your 7-figure income, or plus 7-figure plus income, to your ability to love people? Is that part of the equation that's important?
For sure. I would say 99.9%. And, it's not to say that we haven't ever experienced conflict, because again, I want this interview to be so authentic to who we are. It's been messy. And at the end of the day, I've had to say I'm sorry. I've had to own different scenarios, because when you grow significant and you grow as quickly as we did, the rubber meets the road. And I always wanted to make sure I left people well, and to be able to have those, those intimate conversations, and be able to move forward in leadership. And part of, I think, women, right, and being a woman, Jim Cooper said it best. He's like, if you can work with women, you are going to be super successful in this opportunity, and also with conflict. And so I would say allowing individuals to feel seen, heard, and valued is some fundamentals to this opportunity. And while you may not always agree, or agree to disagree, or agree with maybe an idea that's coming forth, it is so important to validate and listen and be present. And again, in that age where we're on our phones, we are moving really swiftly. Again, our growth was very significant. It wasn't the average growth. They say, we are the 1%. But that didn't come without all of these amazing people coming alongside of us and working in the same direction. I always think about, David, a boat. And if you have one person in the boat and you've got one oar, you're going so hard, and the boat is just going around circles, right? Yeah. But it takes a team, and it takes you being in sync with one another. And when the oars are hitting the water and the force in which they're going, that's when you really catch momentum. And to be able to see this play out, not only in our lives, but also our kids' lives. And at first, our youngest daughter Haley was talking about just going to cosmetology school, right? Now she's talking about owning potentially her salon, and she just did her first cleanse with a girlfriend the other day, or a detox, and she had a mom and a daughter reach out. So I'm doing my first 3-way call with our youngest daughter, who's 18, and I just think about what we've modeled and how we've given people in our organization and the people looking in to say, hey, it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to start right where you are. We are going to love you. We are going to see you, hear you, and value you to come be a part with us.
Yeah. It's interesting though, when you using that boat analogy, if you look at, you know, a dragon boat race, or you look at some of I think of the Maoris, or, you know, some of the people from the islands, you know, and you watch them together. It's not only that you're in sync, but you gain strength, because you know, there's that person leading, and you just fall into a rhythm of success and a rhythm. And even if the waves come, you know, you're just actually, so I think that's the beauty of building as a team. And you said that. I was the same. I didn't play many team sports growing up, and watching, and because of the gym I go to a gym where there's a lot of professional athletes go there. And so watching high level athletes train in the morning, it's really inspiring to me to see just the output and what their bodies are, what's possible, and their mindset around, you know, how far they can go. But there's a group of 19 girls in there. They're all high level hockey players, and they've been in there every single morning, and they're there for a half an hour. When I arrived, they're still there for a half an hour. Watching these 19 young girls, the youngest is 13, the oldest is 17, but just looking at how they drive each other, and that within that group, you know, there's some people who excel at certain things, and that I watch as someone who's not as great, but then I watch that person standing and cheering the other person on, knowing that they're, you know, really eclipsing their time or their weight or the distance or whatever it is, and just seeing that camaraderie. And I think that's the beauty, again, if we look at our profession, that it really is a team sport. It's not a solo sport. But like you say, conflict is very normal in life, and it's certainly normal in business, and it can be when you build teams, but it's learning, and you've had to learn that. It's sort of adapting and learning, and these muscles that grow in the process. You didn't have them fully before, but you've been able to grow them during. Talk about that journey. So you're 7 years in now. Do you consider yourself to be a professional yet? Or do you still feel like you're learning? If you rated yourself out of 10, even though you're making 7 figures plus, how do you rate yourself as far as a professional network marketer?
That is like a complex question. So again, I'm just going to really be vulnerable here. Being 45 and playing in a space like Instagram and Facebook with young people and wondering, like, am I doing this right? And so such a opportunity for growth and development. As far as building an epic network marketing opportunity, I would say we're definitely professionals that are continually to evolve. You know, really reaching out and going, how can I add more value? We lay our head on the pillow at night, and Jeremy and I are continually talking about, are we doing enough? How can we do it better? What systems can we put in place? We paid for mentoring and other people to kind of take a look in like this and say, hey, you might want to add a system in this, you know, area. And so I would say, I still feel a little bit like a disaster as a professional. And I don't know that you ever are going to have all the answers, because our world is moving quickly and things are adapting and changing swiftly. So being okay, you always talked about every master was a beautiful disaster. We definitely have mastered specifics as far as connecting, loving people well, seeing them, valuing them, giving them a place and a space here. But as far as technology and things like that, I still feel like a disaster. I'll be completely the first one to say that, but I am always willing to learn.
Yeah. Let's talk about pivoting, because I mean, we are recording this during COVID. I don't mind if you're listening to this in a year from now, don't even make COVID the thing, but you'll have your own COVID. There's a challenge in front of you right now, regardless of what you're doing, there's a challenge. What the world, I mean, I don't like this term new normal. I just think the world's constantly been in flux, and that life is constantly in flux. If for people who live life, some people, it doesn't feel in flux because they've got so comfortable and they do the same job and they're not stretching or growing. They've accepted that this is how much money they're going to earn for the rest of their life, and they go to their job dutifully and come home, but they're not necessarily inspired. And that's the beauty of that team part of, you know, being inspired by other people to see what's possible. But when you look at this situation right now, what are some of the changes or how you're adapting to the way the world's emerging? Again, I just don't like this term new normal. I just think it's a crazy way. I don't want to be normal. So I don't want to have a new normal. I want it to be extraordinary because that's the way I like to live life, right?
I would say instead of doing these, because we are fans of in-person events, David, like that's my soul. I love to connect with another soul sitting across from me and really love well and get a pulse on them. I feel like so much is done through screens. And while that is, praise God, we have the opportunity to connect with anybody around the world, I miss the one-on-one connection. And so I started doing one-on-ones where I would invite people into our home and they would have the opportunity to walk through what a typical day looks like for us and really be able to ask pertinent questions. And, you know, I love, again, really asking those deep questions like, you know, how many times a day do you think about making this shift? And the closer it gets to Monday, does that excel as how many times is it, you know, 25? Is it 75? If you had an opportunity to earn an additional income while in the midst of just I'm calling this year the power of the pivot. I love to think in the glass always half full. I know some people are always looking at like what could go wrong. I'm always thinking what can go right. Not to say that I don't struggle and battle at times with like being in fear of whatnot, but just having the tools like you talked about to say, nope, not going to stay there. How can we do this better? So one-on-ones have been huge. Also getting together and asking myself, like, how do I fuel myself back up? And we just recently started a Bible study. I posted it online. We have 20 women that are coming to our house. You can have, group gatherings of 50 or less. And so they were coming to the door and I asked every one of the women as they walked in, can I hug you? Because as much as, and this is so about leadership, right? As much as you're giving, you're also receiving. And every time I squeeze someone, I am feeling my cup just as much as I'm feeling theirs. And so it's been so cool to, in this moment, really honor community and don't ever take it for granted because we are made to be and live in community. And so those are some things that we're doing different. Also with our opportunity, we're doing regular calls. We've really empowered other people to own their greatness. We do work at calls where they're, getting on the phone. One of our leaders she actually came into my house as an executive assistant when we were in just this really big need, and she owned an assistant company. And I remember looking at her, she was always giving. Tanya, you should do this in business, or this might be something that helped you. And I'm like, girl, you run 3 different businesses. Are you happy? That's all I asked her, David. And 2 weeks later, she called me and she said, hey, can we grab coffee? And I qualified her for my time because I was really busy. I said, are we having coffee because you've thought more about the question I asked you and you're wanting some more information? Or are we getting together as 2 women entrepreneurs and we're just gonna like download and like have a meeting of the minds? Or are you looking for a friend? And she goes, you just qualified me for your time. I said, I did. I'm going to spend time with you irregardless, but I need to know how I'm showing up to this meeting. And I need to know how to best serve you. And in order to do that, I need to know really bottom line, what are we talking about here? And she is the one who's doing amazing, like robes and reach outs 3 times a week. And I just adore her.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Qualify for your time, because that's about posture, and understanding your time is so valuable. And I love the piece you put on the end, because a lot of people get fixed in business. And here's someone you respect and you like. And by asking that last question, which I love, are we just going to be friends? Is this just going to be a friendly kind of, or you just need to have a chat? There's that sort of complexity of where do you want to go? So when they come to you, you know exactly where the starting point is and how to advance that. One of the other things we talked about earlier was, growing people. I mean, if you're in our profession, and I think that this is the part of it. We understand even John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. And if we understand his philosophy of positional leadership, where you have the badge, permission leadership, where you understand people, production leadership where you do the do, you know, people development leadership where you're growing people, and then pinnacle leadership, which is where you're growing other great leaders to grow people. So if that's the 5 levels, that, you know, there's definitely a journey, but there's so few professions where we can grow people. Because if I have a job, it's very hard for me to go to someone and say, guess what? I want you to grow past me. I want you to out-earn me. I want you to be able to have everything you can, because if my job only pays, or that job only pays $40,000 a year, I actually want to contain you into your $40,000 box and not really give you any hope to go past it, because it's not there. Yet in our profession, you know, the fact that there is no ceiling, and the more people we help, like this lady, it sounds like she's remarkable, and that, you know, you can see whether she sees it or not, she's going to be one day sitting where you are as a 7-figure a year income earner, fully happy, because, and you said this, not only has she learned to fill up her own cup, but she's also, her profession is to actually fill other people's cups from her overflow, not just from this empty cup, right? My point is, where's the long questions, is about growing people, right? And that fact that you're in a profession where growing people really is tantamount to that success. I see that sign behind you, which is the 7-figure income earner club. That 7, you know, represents your ability to grow, and not only attract, inspire, and grow people. Talk about that. What's been some of the big lessons you've learned about, you know, we talked about loving people, and you can talk about that as well, and growing people. Talk about the journey of doing those 2 things well.
I would love to say I've arrived in this, but I am again going to tell a really recent story, just being transparent here. We have an amazing cleaning lady. She comes into our house twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. And I typically, while her and her crew are here, I'm on Zooms. I am in the middle of my work day. We've had our kids home because, you know, being not able to go to school. So it's been real, like, orchestrating a lot and a lot of moving plates. And she came to me, I was in the kitchen, which I'm not really in the kitchen often. I'm usually in my office or back in getting ready for appointments or whatnot. And she had one of her helpers, and she was like, Miss Tanya, I'm really struggling, and my numbers in my blood work are really high, and I'm needing to make some shifts. You help me? And I was so convicted, David. She's been in my house for over a year. I love her. She is a hard worker. And here I thought to myself, like, I'm so in the midst of things, like, do you see the people around you? Do you open doors for people and say thank you? Do you look at the clerk when you check out at the grocery store? Do you listen for pain points and be that helper? And here she was in our house, and I immediately went in and grabbed her one of my favorite, it's a plant-based meal replacement, and I gave it to her, and I said, this is on me. Go home. This is how you use it. This is how you utilize it. And the next week we brought her in as a part of our family, and this opportunity. And I thought to myself, never again will I ever have someone in our home and not serve them in that way or not have approached them. I was just in the midst of being busy. And so I will tell you, no matter who you are, no matter your race, no matter your age, your demographic, any of that, I vow to always be and offer my best. I used to have a hat, David, that said, do not disturb, and I would wear it when I was out and about. If I was just tapped out and I was like, I'm just going to go get my nails done, or I'm going to go maybe do a shop trip or whatnot. And you know that every time I was so convicted, because of course you think, I'm just going to be invisible in this hat and no makeup and whatnot. And those are when some of the most amazing conversations have taken place. And I'm always reminded in my spirit, it's not about me. And it's okay to have those moments of, to be quiet and rest. And that's not what I'm saying, but also to be mindful of the people, because again, that badge of busy, oftentimes we go through our day and we don't see people around us who are desperately looking for what we have to offer. And as a network marketer, it is, I feel, a calling and my duty to be approachable and to also be aware. And I feel like a lot of people walk around with their head in their phones and they don't really see people anymore. And I want to attribute that a lot to our success, because oftentimes when I other people maybe have missed those social cues, I'm very sensitive to them, and I can be able to pick up and say, how can I help?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, you know, I mean, you and I are in alignment with this. And I mean, one of the practices, whether you're listening to this and you are in network marketing, or you're listening to this and you're not, you know, the idea of building that muscle of awareness, you know, and one of the things I do when I walk down the street is I look at every single person's face as I pass. And if they turn their head and they see me, I say hello to them. And sometimes I'll say hello regardless, even if they don't. But it's interesting how sometimes people are shocked, but so often people are open. I mean, I would say the majority of people that I speak, and you know me, I speak to everybody, but I know that, and this is a beautiful saying that I think that people really grasp this piece, and you can talk to it as well. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. So if we're cynical, it feels like what we find on the outside is cynicism. If we're fearful, we see things that make us scared. You know, if we're jealous, you know, we see things that create jealousy. So the idea is whatever's going on the inside of our body is what we actually shows up. So if I walk into a situation and I'm closed and I'm distracted and I'm self-absorbed, then what's going to happen is the people around me will feel that closeness, and they're going to close up in accordance with my energy. And so I may walk through the world and only feel that people are so nasty, or people are so closed. And yet somebody could walk behind me. You could walk behind me with your openness and awareness. And just by noticing, just by saying hello, just by knowing, even if you don't use the words, how can I help? But in your inside of your heart, there's a helping muscle that says, I'll help anyone, anytime, in any way I can. The energy we push out is bringing back. And I want you to sort of talk a little bit about that, of the world you've created now with these new muscles that you've both developed before and in your ministry. Because I'm guessing part of the reason you're successful is because you did work in an area where your heart center was, and that sounds a little woo-woo for some people, but certainly your muscle of giving came before you joined network marketing, right?
For sure. A couple of things were kind of ringing in my heart as you were talking. Our owner of our company, Eric, introduced me one time on stage, and I will tell you, out of all the compliments, this one stuck. And he said, when you spend time with Tanya, or you are in her space, you get all of her. And that was something I've never forgot. I kept that with me. And as far as like that heart growth, I think a lot of times people are always like, what's in it for me? And, you know, I have selfishness. I'm just like everybody else. There are times where I'm like, no, I want it like this. And you like want to be a little kid and fall on the floor and kick your feet. However, I have found that when you do open yourself up and you are in that heart growth, and you're looking and saying, you know, how can we, if you don't like this, one of my biggest frustrations in life is if you don't like your job, or you don't like your family, or you don't like yourself, what are you going to do? And what are the steps you're going to take? Because you hold the power to change that. And I think that oftentimes we forget as people that we have the gift of choice. We are one of the only living, breathing creatures that does truly have that gift of choice. And David, I know we don't have the time to unpack it all, but I'm going to give you a little snippet. One of my mentors said, you know, Tanya, amazing people that create amazing, you know, opportunities and things don't just happen. And I have so much in my background. I have sexual abuse. I was in a marriage that was very disruptive, physical abuse. I, at 19, tried to take my life because I was going to make a permanent decision in a temporary problem. And so if you're listening today and you think, I could never do that, I want you to tap in to maybe your hardest points and be able to go, man, if she could do that, if she could push past. And I cry not because I'm still in that place, but I think about the nurse at the hospital, and she said, you're here for a reason. Don't ever give that away. Don't ever give your power away. And so if you're in this place and you need someone to be able to say, yes, you can, because so many times we play the comparison game and we think, oh, well, that's okay for her, or they don't know my situation, or they don't know that we're financially in duress, or they don't know my health concerns. That you give yourself permission to do the work to become that next level of you. So I want to be transparent. Like, I have done some hard work. I've had to do a lot of forgiving. I've had to say I'm sorry. I've had to have arguments in my family, and really at the end of the day say, at the end of the day, like, we love you. We want to do this together. We always talk about Ohana over everything. That's what we call our family. And my kids have been able to know my story going forward. And we've been very open and transparent in how to talk vulnerability. So as you're listening in, no matter what vocation you're a part of, you can make a change today. And this year is the power of the pivot. And it's going to take you standing in the gap for yourself to move forward.
Yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it? And we definitely now have to have a whole new show. So I'm going to invite you back because I really want to unpack that with you. But it's interesting where when you've reached this season, let's say, and I'm in a season ahead of you, let's say, if we're just talking about the age season, I'm not talking about success or anything else, but certainly, you know, there's a deeper understanding that I have that even what appears to be negative or appears to be hard or appears to be, you know, the biggest challenge, I know in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months, I'm going to look back and just say clearly that was the greatest thing that ever happened, regardless of what it is, because I've learned that in the old days, you know, when I was younger, you know, when I was trying to control everything and trying to get what I wanted in the way that I wanted it, life was hard. Now when I flow with really what's happening, and if people leave my life or something happens or I lose something, the house burns down, I just know. I know that in reflection, whether it's a year from now or whatever, I'm going to look back and say, that was a pivotal, going back to the pivot, that was a pivotal, I can't even say it, pivotal moment in my life that I would never go back and change. And you talk about the abuse, whether it's sexual or physical, or whether, you're talking about spousal abuse, all these different things. I would guess, and we've never had this conversation, but I'm gonna put it out there because I know from my own journey, I've been through many of the similar things. I wouldn't go back and change a thing because it's given me greater empathy, given me the compassion, it's given me a depth of understanding. So would I go back and wish I had a perfect childhood? No. Would I go back and wish those things never happened? No, not at all. And I would ask that of you too, you know, and people who are in it right now, whether they're going through a divorce, and sadly, and again, more in your country than any other country, I think, you know, divorces are forced to be so negative and nasty because of legal and lawyers and all this kind of stuff that goes on. But if someone's going through something right now, do you subscribe to that feeling too, that in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they're going to be looking back going, you know, best thing that ever happened?
Oh, for sure. I always look at our life in like 30, 60, 90 days. What happened 90 days ago, was that an opportunity for growth? Was it personal development, spiritual development, physical? You know, I have a girlfriend who loves tennis and she just recently broke her wrist. And I was texting with her the other day and I said, how are you doing? And she's like, you know what? I'm so grateful that we found it when we did. I'm in a cast. I don't have to have surgery. And she just started like laying out all the positives instead of, woe is me, I have to be in a cast for this long. And so I do think too, David, it is about perspective. And again, flexing the muscle of choice. And when you equip yourself, I move my body, I'm at Pilates 6 days a week. We own a Peloton. I walk with Jeremy at night. We download. Sometimes we yell. I'm sure like our neighbors are like, oh my gosh, which one are we going to get? Because we don't leave things under the rug. I refuse as a 45-year-old woman to not discuss it and not really be able to come back and say, I love you. At the end of this, I need you to know I love you and I'm in this with you. But also really being passionate about things that move the needle for us. That, you know, you do the things also that you can physically grab a hold of that ability to have that growth mindset and move forward. And what are you eating? And how many hours of sleep are you getting? And What's your stress level? I go to have blood work done every 6 months to see like, where's my baselines? Where are my hormone levels at? I've referred our naturopath office over 150 women because I'm passionate about this subject. And if they can check in and pay that forward for their families, that's the part that I think a lot of people miss out. They're like, wow, well, good for you. You can make this choice, or you crawled out of, hardship or whatever. But man, I continually do the work, and it takes you physically taking care of your physical self, which is why I'm so passionate about being a part of this opportunity to show up as your best self. We help people live quality lives, and you can't put a price on that.
No, that's awesome. We're sort of getting to the close of the show, and I don't want to. I almost want to keep going here, but we will, again, I want to invite you back, and I love these conversations with you. It's always so, I always feel so aligned with your vision of life and your thought process. But I wonder if there a question that you'd like me to ask you before, and I'm going to throw it back to you. Is there a question that to sort of tie a bow on this, or something you'd like to answer or leave everyone with? But I always think there's probably a question. You think, oh, boy, I wish you'd ask me that.
Oh man. I would say, where do I, since we've accomplished, some people have this. I love Steve Harvey. He talks about take your lid off the jar. So maybe the question is, where do you see yourself going from here, and how will you help other people get there?
Awesome. So where do you see yourself going from here? And what was the question again?
And how will you help other people get there?
And how are you going to help others get there? I have a very brilliant question for you, Tanya. Let me ask you. Yeah, answer that question for me.
I love you, David. You're so cool. So Steve Harvey has this video I'll never forget, and he put
Steve Harvey, the TV host and the guy. Yeah.
So he put the fleas in a jar. He put a mama flea and the baby fleas in the jar, and then it was like a clear mason jar, and he tightened and screwed down the lid. So when the mama flea jumped, she kept hitting the top of the jar, and she'd bounce back down. And so, of course, the baby fleas were doing the same thing. They would jump as high as back down. Well, the interesting fact is he took the lid off the jar, David, and the mama flea no longer jumped as high as what she had. And they can jump like 3 feet off the ground. It's crazy the height that fleas have. I didn't know this before watching this because, fleas are not like a point of interest for me. But what I found interesting is that the baby fleas watched how high the mama flea jumped. And so when the lid was off the jar, they didn't know the height that they could jump. They didn't realize they had like a 3-foot jump. They were only jumping maybe, 5 inches. And so where are we going from here? I want to take and keep unpacking, like, who is Tanya Kirkpatrick? How can I bring more value to this world? How can I be an awesome Gigi, a mom, a wife, a steward of what God has equipped us with at this point? And how can I teach other people to unscrew the lid off their jar and jump high and excel in ways that they maybe didn't know existed, or they had stuff so deep down that they weren't quite sure how to uncover that. And that is what I'm passionate about, and really being able to do that and say, you're not alone.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you say that story, it reminds me of how they train an elephant, right? So they take a baby elephant, they take a great big metal stake, and they drive it into the ground, and they use huge thick chains, and they tie the elephant to this stake, and the baby elephant will pull and pull and pull and pull and pull until it stops. And now, as the elephant grows, now you think how big an elephant is, which about tons and tons of weight, they use a flimsy piece of string on a little tiny wooden peg, and the elephant will not pull that. And I wonder again, whether we're using the mason jar and the flea analogy or the elephant analogy, how many of you right now realize that, your leg is tied with a flimsy piece of string, or that mason jar lid, and what I love about your analogy so deeply, or Steve's analogy, is the conditioning of the second generation. It's not even, so you may be children or parents, or you may have a community around you that doesn't jump very high. And so you're jumping as high as the people around you, and you've just never been around someone that said, hey, there's a whole other level up there. You want to jump together, right? So, Tanya, thank you. I love who you are. I send my love to Jeremy and just tell him I said hi. Anytime you want to come back, please do. I am going to be reaching out to you again very shortly because I want to do some online training that I'd like you to be a part of. So look for that. Any last thoughts, any last words, any last comments before we wrap it up?
No, I'm so honored. Thank you so much for having me. And those of you listening, take your lid off the jar.
Take the lid off. So remember, the show is called My Extra Mile. It's about those little incremental steps, that little 1% of difference. So it's, each day, just that little tiny incremental step that's going to allow you to take to move towards the things that you love, the things you want, the dreams and goals you have. So thank you for being a part of it. And we'll definitely see you on the other side.
Mwah.
Mwah.